ויהי בימי אחשוורוש, ואחשוורוש, ויהי בימי אחשוורוש, ואחשוורוש, המלך מיועדו והכוש, המלך מיועדו, 27 המדינה, 27 המדינה, שמי, 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 שנכנס אדר, מי שנכנס אדר מרבים בשמחה, מי שנכנס אדר מרבים בשמחה. Oy ונהפוך 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 נהפוך ונהפוך 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 איי 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 אשר ישלטו היהודים עמו בשונאיהם אשר ישלטו היהודים עמו בשונאיהם Mishemi, Nasada. Shemi, Nasada. Shemi, Nasada, Marbim, Simchon. Mishemi, Nasada, Marbim, Simchon. חגורים, חגורים, חג גדול ליהודים, מסכות לשנים, שבריקודים. חגורים, חגורים, חג גדול ליהודים, מסכות לשנים. אבן האישה, הששש, אבן האישה, אבן האישה, הששש, השנים. אבן האישה, הששש, אבן האישה, אבן האישה, הששש, No. From the increasing in joy, we go to the matter at hand tonight. We know it's not only an additional shiur. Well, we're talking about Purim, right? It's not only an additional shiur Monday night. We're also talking about the increasing in joy. But beyond this, it's also the 7th of Adar, the Yom Huledes, the day of the birthday of Moshe Rabeinu, the Moshe Rabeinu that took us out of Mitzrayim, and the Moshe Rabeinu that connects all the Moshe Rabeinus of every single generation, as it states very clearly in the Holy Zohar, attributed to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. In every generation and generation, Islay Kemeshe, there is one as Moshe Rabeinu. And this is also the topic of the entire concept of the joy that we are commanded, that we are instructed in the Shulchan Aruch to increase in our joy in the month of Adar. It all is generated from this day of Adar, the 7th of Adar, the birthday of Moshe Rabeinu, because the entire decree of Haman HaRasha was nullified through the merit, through the schus, that the month of Adar has its mazel is bori, its mazel is revealed, and it is strong. And it's strong and revealed because this is the month that Moshe Rabeinu, the first leader of the entire Jewish nation, was born. Now, in order to understand this, we also have to capsulate the idea that Haman HaRasha, when he drew the lots and he found that it's going to be on the month of Adar, he was very happy because he knew that Moshe Rabeinu passed away in the month of Adar, and he was even more happier because he saw that it was the 13th of Adar that he drew a lot for. And this brought him to the conclusion that, wow, it's even after the Yortzeit, it's even after the Shiva of Moshe Rabeinu, 7 days later, from the 7th till the 13th. So he was sure that there is no more merits. There are no more schuyas for the Jewish nation, and therefore he felt that everything is open for him to carry out his decree. And as we mentioned, what he didn't know, or what he wasn't aware of, was the fact that Moshe Rabeinu passed away on the 7th of Adar, but Moshe Rabeinu also was born on the 7th of Adar. And as it states very clearly in the Talmud, Godel Yom HaOledes Shetechaper Al Yom HaMisa. The day of the birth is great that it atones for the day of the passing, which is something that needs to be explained, because a person that is born with no averos, no sins, and so after he accumulates his 120 years here in this world, you'd think that it would be the opposite, that the day of the passing of the person is what atones for the day of the birth, after he accumulated whatever he accumulated during the years of his lifetime. Comes the Gemara and says, no, what we're talking about over here, and this is also what Haman didn't understand, is that the day of the birth, in every generation, there is the day of the birth of Moshe Rabeinu. There is a Moshe Rabeinu of the generation. And this Moshe Rabeinu, his birth and his existence is the merit that the Jewish nation has in order to dismiss and to do away and to nullify any and all decrees that the Jewish nation might be standing and being confronted with. This is something Haman didn't understand, and this is the entire miracle of Purim is in the merit of the birth of Moshe Rabeinu, and we see that the birth of Moshe Rabeinu has the ability to go and to have an influence, a hashpah, on the days before and on the days after. The days before, it says very clearly in the Shulchan Aruch that Misha Nichnas Adar, from the time that the month of Adar enters, we start our joy, our rejoicing, increasing in our joy. And we see also that the 7th of Adar was 6 days prior to the whole decree of Haman HaRasha. And we see that even though it was 6 days prior, it has the ability to go and to have an influence on the days after the 7th of Adar as well. And so also in our story that we have here tonight, it's a beautiful story. It's a story that people might have heard in the past, but I don't think that we told it here in the structure of the classes. And therefore, since it's very much connected with Moshe Rabeinu, we'll tell the story. There was a couple. The couple's name was HaSofer, and they originally, the HaSofers, Rav Michal, Avram Michal, and Atara, they originally came from Mitzrayim, believe it or not, from Egypt. They came as Olim Chadashim, or whatever. They came to live in Eretz Yisrael, but after a certain, and they were brought up somewhere on a kibbutz or something. There were no deep ties that were made with the Holy Land, and they were into the academics. He was into mathematics, she was into psychology. So they decided to pick up and leave to Australia. They received their Australian citizenship. Then it was not such an easy task. And today also it's not easy, but then even more difficult. They received their Australian citizenship, and when they arrived, they went and they started to study in the University of Tasmania. That's like one of the most distant points that you can reach in the world, beyond the South Pole, let's say. But they were studying there, and they were like, Yordim, Israelis that left Israel. They were living in Tasmania. They were living their life. They even they had children, and in Tasmania, when we're talking about the population is something like, then it was something like 300,000 people, and there was also a Jewish population, which was by the official number was 30 people. but, and this is a big but, Tasmania has one of the most oldest synagogues, one of the most oldest shuls in the Southern Hemisphere. I think it's the second oldest. There's an older one, I think maybe somewhere in South America, but it's second oldest, and this is where? In Hobart, Tasmania. Okay, but with 30 Jews, you don't really have too much competition. Not only do you not have that much competition, but the people that would arrive, they would come to the shul, really didn't know too much about Judaism, besides the fact that they're Jewish, and Jews come to synagogue on Shabbos. They used to be coming on Shabbos, and that's the only time that the synagogue was opened up. The rest of the time it was chained. It was closed with a lock and key, with a chain. And there was someone that was learned enough in order to go into to be the chazan, to lead the services, and to read in the Sefer Torah. They had Sefer Torahs over there. They still have, and that's the way they conducted the services. They were not it wasn't common knowledge to keep, to observe Shabbos. They used to arrive with transportation, and at the end of the service they used to leave and lock up the shul. This learned fellow, all of a sudden, he after a few amount of years, he tells the congregation that he's packing his bags and he's leaving Tasmania. They said, what are we going to do now? We don't have anyone to lead the services. We don't have anyone to read the Torah. He said, listen, I'd like to help you, but you're on your own from now on. They started to look into it, and they found a person who knew Hebrew, and that's all they needed, because if you know Hebrew, you can read from the prayer book, you can read from a siddur, and you can read from the Torah, right? Who was this individual? Avram Michol HaSofer. They found him in the university, and they approached him, and he said, listen, you guys must be out of your mind. You're asking me to lead the services, to read from the Torah scroll? I'm an atheist. I don't believe in anything. You have the wrong address. I don't know who sent you, but it's totally, it's totally wrong. They said, listen, this is something that you have the responsibility for, because you're the only one in the entire island of Tasmania that speaks Hebrew. Without you, we don't have anything to do. The whole Jewish population is going to go down the drain. And they kept on talking and nudging and asking, until he finally said, listen, you know what? I see that this is not a concept that is only related to religion, but I see this as a concept that is related to social services. Now, social services for my fellow Jews, I'm willing to do. But if you sure you don't mind an atheist coming. He said it's totally. I think it's the first time in the history of the Jewish nation that there's going to be an atheist that's going to be leading the services and reading in the Torah scroll. He said to them, if you're sure that you don't mind, so then okay, under these circumstances, I'll come. He wound up arriving at the shul for Shabbos. First Shabbos he came. He read from the Siddur, where whatever has to be read, and he read from the Sefer Torah. He read from the Torah scroll, and that's the way a few weeks and months passed on. They finally came to the book of Exodus, the book of Shmos, and in the book of Shmos they're reading about Moshe Rabeinu and Moshe Rabeinu and Moshe Rabeinu. The first, from the first parsha when Moshe Rabeinu was born, and where would he prepare the reading for the Sefer for the Torah? He would prepare at home, and his wife Rebbe Shlita Torah also heard the Moshe Rabeinu and Moshe Rabeinu and Moshe Rabeinu, and it started to sink in. So she said, I had a little background from my family, and for some reason I got turned on. I wanted to go into keep kosher. I also saw in my home, in my parents' home, that they used to light Shabbos candles. So great. So she didn't know exactly what she was doing. She brought a whole set of dishes, and she put them in the kitchen. But then she asked her husband, what am I supposed to do with the old dishes? Because, what, we're just going to take them and throw them away? She felt really bad. So they had the old set of dishes, they had the new set of dishes, but they didn't want to use the kitchen because they didn't want to start mixing milk and meat and so on. So they were really stuck, and they started to eat from paperware, if I'm not mistaken. And then, with all the Moshe Rabeinu and Moshe Rabeinu and Moshe Rabeinu splitting the sea, and so all of a sudden, the husband looks at the wife, and the wife looks at the husband, and they look up to Hashem. And they say, "Listen, we're reading about Moshe and Moshe and Moshe, but that was thousands of years ago. If there is," and this was a half question, half request. If there is a Moshe Rabeinu in our generation, so please, would you mind revealing him to us? Because we have so many questions over here, and we don't know who to turn to. Okay, it's a beautiful story, but that's only half the story. The next week arrives a tourist to Tasmania, gets off the plane, and the first place that he starts looking start touring is the synagogue. This person was Rav Chaim Gutnick, who at that time was in regular correspondence with the Rebbe. And in one of the letters, the Rebbe instructed Rav Chaim Gutnick to travel to Tasmania, to Hobart, and to visit the Jewish congregation there. Okay. So he goes to the synagogue. That's the first place that you find Jewish congregation. He sees everything is locked, on key, chained up, the gates are closed. And he's looking and he's trying to read the sign. Someone passes by who happened to be from the university. And he asked, tell me what's going on with the synagogue. This person wasn't Jewish, but he said, because he had some basic knowledge, people, Hobart, Tasmania, it's a very small place. So he said, listen, this church, he called it, the place, a place of get together. It's only open on Saturdays, because he passes every day and he sees it's only open Saturday. So he said, so what am I supposed to do? I wanted to visit. I came specially. He says, listen, it's only open on Saturday, but I know there's a student from the university that apparently has a key. And he went and he escorted Rabbi Gutnick to the Hasofer family. And he said, this is where the person that has the key or should have the key lives. He said goodbye. And Rav Chaim Gutnick came and knocked on the door. Now, when he knocked on the door, he, the door opened, and one of the children apparently was holding a prayer book, a siddur, and he was saying a prayer, and the father comes to the door, and he looks up, and he sees a person that's dressed like a rabbi with a hat and jacket and a beard, and he almost faints, and he has to sit down, take a cup of water. And then Rabbi Gutnick asked him, is everything okay? He says, is everything okay? What are you doing here? So he says, listen, I didn't want to offend you. Is it okay that I'm here? Of course it's okay, but what are you doing here? How did you come here? How did you arrive? And he started to explain, listen, he received an instruction from the Lubavitcher Rebbe to come to Hobart, Tasmania. It was the first time that he is visiting here. He doesn't know anyone. He was by the synagogue, and this other fellow told him that, if he wants a person with the key, he should come to your home. And he almost faints. And then Rabbi Asofer comes and tells Rabbi Gutnick the entire story. And he tells him about his ordeals, about how he was recruited to come in to lead the services and to read the Torah, and how he encountered the Moshe Rabeinu in the portions of the book of Shmos, of the book of Exodus. And there he turned to Hashem, him and his wife, and they said, if there is a Moshe Rabeinu in our generation also, so they asked him to please go and to reveal him. And all of a sudden, the next week, you show up in our doorway. Now it was Rabbi Chaim Gutnick's turn to almost faint, because he couldn't believe the entire story, that this person in the most distant island in the south of the hemisphere went and prayed to Hashem to have the Moshe Rabeinu of our generation revealed, and the week afterwards he received the correspondence from the Rebbe to immediately go and to visit Hobart, Tasmania. This is the Moshe Rabeinu of our generation. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about the merit of Moshe Rabeinu, the birthday of Moshe Rabeinu. But I've heard this story from many people, but Rabbi Yoel Kahn, back in the days, I'm going back maybe Tafshin Mem Beis, 1982, when I was by the Rebbe learning for Kvutza. I was the group of Israelis that came to learn by the Rebbe. So Yoel Kahn told this story, and he said, "What does anyone really think? Does anyone really think that this is a surprising story about the Rebbe? That the Rebbe knew that there's a Jew in Hobart, Tasmania, that is going through challenges and difficulties, and that this person needs help and instruction, so he sent Rabbi Gutnick over there and so on." That's not news. That the Rebbe has Ruach HaKodesh, that the Rebbe has divine spirit, that's a simple thing. So what's so special about this story? What's special, he would point out, is that it wasn't that Moshe Rabeinu, not that the Rebbe knew what the person is going through, what the Hasofers are going through in Hobart, but that he planted in their minds, he aroused this part of the entire stature of the Jewish nation, because we know that the Rebbe is Rosh B'nai Yisrael, the head of the Jewish nation. And the head feels everything that is going on in the entire body. If it's if it's close up, or if it's the most distant part of the body, the small toe, the pink. But the Rebbe went, and the greatness of this miracle is the Rebbe aroused those two Jews in Hobart, Tasmania, to turn to Hashem and to ask Hashem that he should reveal the Moshe Rabeinu of the generation. This is what the greatness of the story is all about. If a Jew goes and asks the Rebbe, please, Rebbe, we need this, we need that, of course the Rebbe is going to send. But if there's a Jew that is suffering and they don't know what they need, they don't know who to turn to, so they have to be woken up. They have to be aroused. This is what the Rebbe planted in their minds in order for them to turn to Hashem, and thereafter for the Rebbe to go and to send Rabbi Chaim Gutnick, who obviously went and answered all their questions. And we know the story that later on they came to the mainland, to Australia. At the beginning, they were in, I think they were both teaching in the University of Canberra, and afterwards they set up shop in New South Wales in Sydney, where they basically brought up their children. Yibadlu l'chaim tovim amen. They should all be differentiated for a good and happy and long life. One of their children is my sister-in-law. One of their children, Rebbe Chaya, today she's Chaya K, is married to my brother. He should be healthy and well, Rav Daniel K, who is the shliach of the Rebbe in New South Wales in Sydney, Australia. No, since we have the Moshe Rabeinu of that generation from over 3,300 years ago, and in every generation, and in our generation, we have our Moshe Rabeinu, the Rebbe Shlita Melech Ha'Moshiach, and there's no doubt in the Rebbe's words that we are the last generation to ever be in exile, and we are the first generation to experience Geula, to experience the redemption. And all we need is to be able to see the redemption that we already are in, is to open our eyes and to be able to greet Mashiach. And this should be immediately now with the revelation of the Rebbe Shlita Melech Ha'Moshiach. L'chaim, l'chaim l'brocha, yichi Adonenu, Moreinu v'Rabbeinu, HaMelech Ha'Moshiach, li'olam v'ed. L'chaim, l'chaim l'brocha.
Amen, l'chaim, l'chaim.
Amen, l'chaim. And with that, Benjamin Alexander came up.
You see? He heard that his neshama felt that we're talking about Australia.
Right.
Baruch Hashem.